I never thought I'd see the day my wife would be chained to our own porch railing like some kind of property violation. It wasn't a criminal. It wasn't a stranger. It was the president of our HOA, clipboard in one hand, padlock in the other, and she thought she had the right to do it. She had no idea she'd just crossed the wrong man. She had no idea I was the new chief of police for Brook Meadow Township. We'd only moved here a couple of weeks earlier. After years in the city, I took the job in this quiet town because I wanted more time with my wife Lena. She'd just had back surgery, serious, complicated, the kind that left her weak and fragile for months. The only thing that gave her some freedom was a specialized medical recliner we kept on the porch. It let her sit upright, feel the sun, breathe fresh air without risking a fall. That chair was her independence. It was hope. Then Dolores Penwright, our HOA president, self-declared guardian of community harmony, decided the chair didn't fit her vision of the neighborhood. She called it an obstruction to visual harmony. That morning, while I was inside grabbing coffee, she walked right up with her clipboard, looped a cold steel chain around the arm of the recliner, and snapped a padlock shut. My wife's arm was trapped under it. She didn't even fight back, she just froze, terrified. I stepped out and saw it. My wife chained, trembling, Dolores standing there with that smug little smile. "You chained my wife to the railing," I said, low. She shrugged, brushing dust off her glove. "Secured a health hazard for community safety. Read your bylaws." That was her mistake. She thought this was just another neighbor she could bully into silence. "You should have Googled me first," I told her. "I'm the new chief of police here. And what you just did, that's unlawful detention of a disabled woman impersonating a code officer and abuse of authority. Congratulations, Dolores, you've just crossed into criminal territory." Her face flickered just for a second. Not panic, confusion. She looked at my badge clipped to my hip, then at the porch camera that had recorded the entire stunt. "You're bluffing," she muttered. I snapped the lock open with my multi-tool, freed Lena's wrist, inspected her skin, red but unbroken. I held my wife close as she whispered, "She said it was HOA policy." I shook my head. It never was. I thought maybe that moment would shut Dolores down. I was wrong. The next morning, a bright orange sticker screamed, "Immediate violation," across the side of the recliner. That afternoon, a folded notice hung from our doorknob. Fines $250 per day, escalating threats scrawled in red ink. Chair must be removed within 24 hours, or enforcement action will resume. Enforcement. Like my wife was a code violation. When I marched down to the HOA office, blinds were drawn, doors locked, but taped to the window was a sign, "New security upgrades, compliance cameras installed on all corner lots." I looked up. Sure enough, a bullet camera pointed straight at our porch. By the time I walked home, I counted 5 more lining the street. None of them had been there 2 weeks ago. This wasn't about rules. This was about control. That night, Lena whispered to me. She had Trevor install it. Trevor the landscaper. Quiet guy built like a fence post, always trimming hedges with his head down. My wife said Dolores made him lock the chain too. He hadn't wanted to. He'd looked sick. He'd asked, "Are you sure?" And she shoved the clipboard in his face until he did it. That told me everything. Dolores didn't just abuse power, she used others to shield herself. Days passed. More notices nailed to our porch. Lena withdrew curtains half drawn, avoiding the street like it might reach through the glass. And me, I started to doubt myself. I'd moved us here for peace, for her recovery. But now I'd dragged her into a war. Every sticker on that chair felt like proof I'd failed her. I remember sitting in the dark one night, watching her flinch in her sleep, hearing her whisper through dreams she couldn't escape. For the first time in years, I felt powerless. Maybe Dolores was right. Maybe we couldn't win against the board. Maybe leaving was the only way out. And then Trevor showed up. He was trimming hedges, hands shaking when I walked over. "You fastened the chain," I said quietly. He froze, shoulders tight. "I didn't want to," he said. His voice cracked. "She said if I didn't, I'd lose every contract in the district." He looked at me, eyes red. "Your wife was crying. That chair was shaking. I wanted to stop, but I didn't." Then he gave me the twist that changed everything. I caught it on my ring cam. Audio, too. He handed me a drive. On it, Dolores, in full view, looping the chains, smirking as she told him, "Make it look official. They need to learn." That was it. That was the line between rumor and fact. I sent the footage to my old ADA contact, Jacob Parr. Within an hour, he called back. "You've got civil rights violations here. ADA breach. Possible criminal detainment. This isn't small, Ethan. This is serious." The case escalated fast. The Attorney General's Civil Rights Division opened an investigation. An agent named Corley was assigned. Suddenly, this wasn't just me versus a clipboard tyrant. This was the law against Dolores. But Dolores didn't stop. She nailed violation notices into my porch. Wood stood at the curb with her smug grin, whispered threats through Trevor to silence him. The HOA board silent as ghosts pushed out newsletters about community uniformity, trying to cover her tracks. And still neighbors stayed quiet, too afraid of her retaliation. I started building my own case file, time-stamped violations, camera photos, witness testimonies. Trevor slipped more evidence under my door work orders, signed by Dolores, text messages ordering him to chain the chair. Then Mrs. Holloway, an elderly neighbor with lupus, showed me a citation for keeping her wheelchair ramp. Another neighbor, Del Mayor, had his handrails cited twice for aesthetic inconsistency. It was a pattern. Dolores wasn't enforcing rules. She was targeting the vulnerable. When Agent Corley finally arrived, sharp-eyed tablet in hand, I laid everything out on the table. She studied the footage, paused on the frame of Dolores, handing Trevor the lock. "That's more than enough," she said. And then came the showdown. At the next board meeting, the room buzzed with whispers. Neighbors sat with folded arms waiting. At exactly 7 Hauserers, Cheryl Darnell, the HOA president, banged her gavel. Dolores sat beside her, stiff eyes cold. I stood before they could begin. "I have a formal submission," I said, voice steady. I dropped the folder on the table. Visual evidence, sworn testimony, signed, HOA documents, all of it implicating Ms. Penwright in unlawful conduct. Dolores scoffed. "This is a smear campaign." I pulled out the still photo, Lena in her chair, Dolores looping the chain. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "You chained my wife to our railing. On camera. In front of a witness you later tried to silence." For once, Dolores had no smirk, no quip, just silence. Then Trevor rose from the sidewall. "I heard you say it. I watched you do it. You handed me the lock." His voice carried like a hammer. Mrs. Holloway spoke next, trembling but firm. "You fined me for the ramp my daughter built after I fell down the stairs." Del Mayor added, "You threatened to remove my railing, called it non-compliant." The room turned. One by one, the people she had silenced spoke. And then Agent Corley stepped forward from the back. "The Office of the Attorney General advises that any board action tonight in contradiction of this investigation may be considered obstruction," she announced. Her badge caught the light. Cheryl's gavel hand froze. Dolores tried one last move. She stood, binder clutched tight. "He's exploiting the law. You think unity means letting people do whatever they want. I kept this neighborhood clean." But the crowd wasn't with her anymore. They'd seen the chain, the photo, the proof. They weren't afraid of her clipboard anymore. They were afraid of what she represented, fear disguised as order. The board folded. Cheryl whispered, "The board will suspend all enforcement actions pending investigation." Dolores spun toward her. "You're just going to give in." Cheryl's voice broke. "I'm going to stop before this gets worse." Agent Corley laid an envelope on the table in front of Dolores. "You'll be contacted for a deposition. Legal counsel is advised." Dolores sat down hard, shoulders stiff, face drained of color. The clipboard that had once been her weapon looked pathetic in her hands now. That was the moment she lost. Not when I cut the lock, not when I built the case, but right there when a whole room stopped fearing her and saw her for what she really was, a bully with a binder. And the lesson I took from it is simple. Silence is their weapon, but truth is ours, because the moment you stand up, they lose control.